Hello! Today I'm going to show you a technique to create a rustic or aged finish on a piece of furniture. It's a relatively simple technique that gives a really good result, and this is one of my favourite techniques as well. This particular piece of furniture is one of the projects in my latest book, Making Doll's House Furniture in 1/12 scale. So if you'd like to have a go at making this exact piece, you can find the tutorial for that in there, and I'll pop a link to the book below. And to create the technique you'll need some paint, and I'm using this emulsion paint which is called Mushroom, and it's a dark cream colour. Now I've got this massive pot because I use this colour quite a lot on my furniture, but they are available in little sample pots which are really suitable for miniature work. And then I'm using a dark oak wood dye. Now I've done another techniques video showing you how to use the wood dye, which you might find helpful if you haven't used that before. And then to finish the piece off we use a clear wax. Now I'm using shoe polish, but you could also use furniture polish. You'll need a brush to apply the wood dye, and the paint, and some kitchen towel. Okay, let's get started. Okay, so I'm going to begin by applying a coat of wood dye to all pieces. Now I've left them separate like this because I want to create a slightly different effect on the base top, and then they'll obviously go together like that once the piece is complete. And on the base top piece here I've put a piece of masking tape on the back, and that just helps when painting it so that you don't get anything on your fingers. And when you're doing something like that you just need to be aware that when that's attached there will be a slight overhang around the underside. So whenever you're doing it, just always apply a coat of wood dye or paint or varnish or whatever you're using just around the outside of the underside as well, so that you've got no sort of visible wood showing when the piece is complete. And because I'm sort of using the dye on a slightly larger area, I've dispensed some here into a plastic pot, and it's important to keep that moving because if it stands still the sort of colour part soaks to the bottom, it separates and you won't get an even colour. So just as you're going along, just keep picking that up and moving it around, or have a little stirrer stick handy that you can do that with. So I'm going to begin with the base top. That lovely rich colour. I love the darker colours. And I've just brought in this little plastic tray. And when I'm sort of painting or varnishing, I have a little tray that I then prop the things on to dry, and that way they won't stick to it. Another thing I wanted to say is that this wood dye can create a lot of sort of splashing, so don't have any other projects on your desk while you're working with it, otherwise they get splashed, and then of course you can't get the colour out once it's on there. So make sure you've got a clear workspace. And I also just keep one paintbrush that I use for the darker wood dyes, because it's a dye and it does actually dye the bristles. Try not to then go and use that on a light coloured paint or something, because it will contaminate the colour slightly. Once you've been over that first coat with your kitchen towel or cloth, that's practically touch dry. And I didn't put wood dye on the top just because that piece is going to be covered. So each piece has now had one coat of wood dye, and one coat is enough for the effect that we're creating. So I'm now going to leave those to dry completely, and that will take 6 to 8 hours. Okay, so these have now been drying overnight, And I'm now going to add the paint. So have some pieces of kitchen towel ready. That's what we're going to be wiping it off with. I'm going to start with this top piece. So just apply your paint as normal. Again, you want to remember to go around that underneath edge. And quite a good covering. You don't have to be as careful here with your lines. Now we don't want it to sort of dry, but I do want to just leave it for a minute, just to let that start to soak into the sort of grain of the wood. And then you can just sort of fold up a piece of kitchen towel and then just very gently just wipe the paint away. Go around the underneath as well. And the more you take off, you'll see how it's sort of sticking inside the grain of the wood. And you get those lovely sort of little marks. That can then be just popped there to dry, which won't take long. Now there's hardly any paint on it. And then you can begin painting the other pieces. I'll get rid of that piece of tissue. Because these are going to take slightly longer, I would say to do it in sections. So I'll do this inside top shelf first, and then wipe the paint back. And then I'll do the bottom bit and wipe the paint back and sort of do it like that, and then the outside. And here I've just torn a piece of kitchen towel in half, just to make it a little bit smaller to get into that area. Again, paint's been drying probably for about 30 seconds. And get right in there and along that back. So that's the inside done. And I shall now begin on the outside. Again, I'll do one section at a time, so that the paint doesn't dry off too much. Okay, so that's all three pieces now done, the top part as well. And you also might find it handy to have a cotton bud or a Q-tip for getting into those corners in that top shelf, just because the shelves are a little bit closer together, so you can use that in exactly the same way as the kitchen towel. Now you want to leave these to dry, and as most of the paint has been brushed away, that really won't take long, but it needs to be completely dry, and then we'll go in and we'll just sand with our fine grade sandpaper. So once the paint has completely dried, take a piece of medium grade sandpaper, and I'm using 180 grade paper here, and I've got some little bits here which makes it easier to get into all the sort of shelf areas. And then you just want to sand over each piece using small circular motions. You can see there it's starting to take the paint off. And then along sort of edges and corners you can just go a little bit harder with the sandpaper, just to sort of remove the wood dye underneath and expose some of the natural wood. Just do that along areas where natural wear and tear would occur, so edges and corners, along the edges of the units, edges of the shelves. That will just make it look more natural. So that's the worktop piece done there. And I'm just going to use a soft brush just to sweep away the sanding dust. And then you can see the finish a little bit better. And then we'll have a nice clear, clean area for when we apply the clear wax. So put that piece out of the way and then you can sand the remaining pieces. When you're sanding sort of on shelves and things, try not to press too hard as well, just in case you break the shelf. So, and always sort of support the bottoms of things with your thumb as you're working. To get into those sort of harder to reach areas, like at the back of shelves, wrap a piece of sandpaper around a spare piece of wood. I'm using a 2.5mm thick piece, so thicker than the normal 1.5 or 1/16 of an inch. Just wrap it round like that, and then you can work inside the shelf area, and you can also get along the sort of joins. Another good way of getting into those sort of hard to reach areas is by using an emery board. Okay, so once you've sanded the pieces, use the soft brush to get rid of all the dust. Just brush them all off. And then I've also cleaned my work surface. And it's just a good idea to wear a dust mask when you're sanding a lot of pieces. Always have a window open, preferably work outside if that's possible. And then before you apply the wax, if you're working on a piece of 2 or 3 parts like this for example, you need to glue them together before applying the wax, because obviously the glue won't adhere over the wax. So I'm now going to join these all together. So the unit is now constructed, and I used masking tape to hold that together whilst the glue was drying. So I've just gone over with a fine grade sandpaper just to remove any pulls that the masking tape left. And now I'm going to add a coat of wax. I'm going to apply it with a piece of kitchen towel. So just get plenty on the kitchen towel and then apply it to the piece in small circular motions. And because it's a soft wood, it's going to soak in really quickly, so you might need to do a couple of coats. And I just love how that changes the complete colour of the wood there. And even on this soft craft wood, it really does bring out the grain. And then what you can do to get into those difficult to reach areas again is wrap the kitchen towel around the end of a paintbrush. Again, apply a bit of wax, and then you can reach into those inside areas, just make that a bit thinner, and get right up to the edges of the shelf. So just keep going and coat the whole piece. And there is the completed piece. Now that had 2 good coats of wax. I think that looks really good. I love this technique. I love this sort of old rustic, aged style furniture. I think this would look fabulous in an old farmhouse kitchen or something like that. There's so many pieces you can use it on. And experiment with it too. Use different wood dye colours, different paint colours, and see how you get on with it. You can always test it first on a piece of scrap wood and see how you like the finish before applying it to your furniture piece. I think if you love that sort of rustic style like I do, this is a really good technique to know. So I hope you've enjoyed this video. If so, please do give me a thumbs up. And if you haven't already subscribed to the channel, then please do so, as there's lots more tutorials to come. If there's a particular technique that you'd like to achieve on your furniture pieces, then just put a message below. If you enjoy making doll's house furniture and miniatures, do have a look at my books. I've published 4 of them so far. The latest one that I showed you at the beginning of the video was just out last month in September. If you'd like to have a go at making this particular dresser, you'll find that in there. All of the books are available to purchase from Amazon, and I'll pop a couple of links below. And for now, thank you for watching, and I hope to see you again soon.